Good evening and welcome to our community conversation with the Special Committee on Commemoration. Tonight's panelists include Virgil Fludd, Davidson College class of 1980. Virgil has been a loyal servant to Alma Mater. He has served in numerous volunteer capacities over the years, including his current leadership roles as President-elect of the Alumni Association Board, member of the Board of Trustees, and chair of the Special Committee on Commemoration. Virgil is founder of the Carvier Group, an executive search and management consulting firm. He and his wife Carolyn reside in Tyrone, Georgia. Our next panelist is Cintra Pollack, Davidson College class of 1999. Cintra is a manager at Race Street Management, a family office investment company. She also serves as secretary-treasurer of the Singer Family Foundation. She currently volunteers on the executive board as the chair of planning and grant-making for Jewish Colorado, a member of the Jewish Federations of North America. At Davidson, Cintra majored in English with an Asian Studies concentration. She was president of the Union Board, a writer for the Davidsonian, editor of Libertas magazine, and a member of the Council on Campus and Religious Life. Cintra lives in Denver, Colorado. Next, Court Savage. Court has served as a member of Davidson's faculty since 1992, currently as professor of art and chair of the art department. A sculptor, Court's works have been exhibited throughout the United States, including the Mint Museum of Art, the Cameron Museum of Art, and the New Orleans Center for Contemporary Art. Court is married to Jennifer Stasak, a composer and professor of music at Davidson. Our final panelist is Janet Stovall, Davidson College class of 1985. Janet is a senior client strategist at the Neuro Leadership Institute, where she helps senior corporate leaders evolve diversity, equity, and inclusion practices to be more brain-friendly and human. She is a TED speaker and a faculty member for the Professional Speechwriters Association. While at Davidson, Janet served as president of the Black Student Coalition and primary author of Project 87, a report highlighting desired changes to improve diversity and inclusion on campus. Janet later served as a founding member of the Davidson Black Alumni Network, DBAN, member of the Commission on Race and Slavery, chair of the Black Alumni Reunion, member of the Board of Visitors, and currently serves on the Board of Trustees. Janet lives in Tucker, Georgia. In addition to being an alum, she is a Davidson parent. Her daughter Maya graduated in 2020. And now for our conversation.
The essence of our work is to acknowledge the past and imagine the future. We want this work to accomplish three things. First, to reaffirm Davidson's commitment to equality and justice. Secondly, to underscore Davidson's commitment to acknowledging our history honestly and fully. And then finally, to recognize the ways that individuals have contributed to Davidson's history honestly and fully. I'm so grateful to be able to chair this committee because it gives me a chance to connect with Davidson in a way that I did not while I was a student. I think back to the time and remember that I didn't really feel that I was really a part of the college. I believe that Davidson didn't welcome me because they really didn't know what to do with me, a low-income Black kid from Charleston, South Carolina, much as it didn't recognize what to do with the women who were new to campus as well. Davidson still struggles with this past. But this committee is helping to reconcile our collective history and to come to grips with our thorny past. Now, I am convinced that we will endure this tenuous, fragile time and will be all the better for it on the other side. Cintra?
Well, I agree. We're in a very interesting time. And I think that times like this require us all to really tap into our wells of empathy. And as a former English major, I really appreciate stories and the way that learning stories builds empathy. And if we're going to examine the story of Davidson College, what makes this campus what it is, what makes this community what it is, I think to not create space to acknowledge something that's not there would be as if we were writing a book about Davidson and we ripped out pages and we were going to just pretend that those pages weren't there. And I think that a physical space, an art installation, a place where people have to think about it, sit there, experience it, I think that it doesn't replace the information on those pages, but it at least acknowledges that they're not there, and that it is our responsibility to try to figure out what goes in those spaces and to fill it in. And my hope for this is that beyond being a very special place on campus, what we create, and the art installation is just part of what we might do to commemorate enslaved and exploited labor. But the place that we wrote the RFQ for, the project that we're working on right this moment, I'm hoping that for a lot of students it makes them more comfortable to have that space on campus. And I also hope that it makes some students less comfortable, and that they have to actually go into a place where they are uncomfortable to learn on the other side a little bit about what it means to not be in a central space where you are known. And I don't know how we can create the leaders of the future world and have people come out of this institution that have great impact on the world if they have not reckoned with what it means to dehumanize other people. And I hope that if students and faculty and community members experience this thing that we're creating, they'll never forget what it means to hold all people as worthy of dignity and to never dehumanize them. And I guess that's a lofty ambition, but I still have that for this project, so.
Well, Cintra, I was also an English major, and so I appreciate the love of stories. And Virgil, I was also a Black student, so I understood what it means to walk on this campus and not really feel like you belong here. But especially in the beginning, I think we come here and we're like most students, we are clueless. We are in college, we don't think about things. But coming here as a Black student changes your perspective very quickly. You meet the staff, because the only Black faces you saw then were staff members. You meet the people in the community because they knew we were adrift, and they invited us into their homes, into their churches, to their tables, into their lives. And therefore we connected with their stories in a way that I think a lot of students don't and didn't, at least back when I was here 35 years ago. Well, you go through the 4 years, or I did at least, and I didn't understand at that point what I could do with those stories, but I knew those stories existed. Fast forward, I go out into the world and I am in corporate America, and I start working in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And I understand more than ever the value of stories told and stories untold. And I learned, and I still believe, that if you don't tell these stories, you continue making the mistakes and you repeat the errors of the past. So I had an opportunity then as a parent to see my daughter come through and do what I told her: connect to the people that look like you. I don't care what position they're in or what they're doing. And I started realizing then that so many of those people that I knew 35 years ago, those families were still here. When I got selected to be on the Commission for Race and Slavery, it was amazing to me to start realizing how important those connections were. So this was a recommendation. This commemoration was one of the recommendations, one of the first recommendations that we made. And I am so happy to be a part of this, because I feel like I've been able personally to go full circle, to go back to those stories that were shared with me as a student, and now maybe bring some of those stories into the light for people who never knew them. Because if we don't honor the past, if we don't acknowledge the past and honor the past, we are doomed to repeat it. And in this highly polarized world that we're living in right now, we have a unique opportunity here at Davidson to do something that a lot of places don't do, to look at what we were and start reimagining who we can be. What's going to be very important, I think, in this whole process is for this to be an inclusive process. It's urgent that we do this now, and it's urgent that this be inclusive. So I am thrilled to be a part of this, and I'm looking forward to where we're going to go from here. We have a long way to go, but we have come a long way. I personally am looking forward to the journey, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the team that's going on it.
I've been a part of that journey for the last 25 years on the campus here at Davidson. One of my roles here has been to be a primary steward of the campus sculpture collection. And over that time, we've seen an incredible transformation of the collection from being always what I would characterize as a museum quality collection right on our campus that people can live with and walk past every day, to something that's become a far larger statement about inclusivity and diversity, and really focusing on a range of artists that has changed dramatically over the years. So I feel really fortunate and to be asked to participate in this project, in part because of that, but also in part because during my last sabbatical, I really took it upon myself to do some more serious reading and a deeper dive into issues of equity and diversity, and reading authors like Layla Saad and Ibram X. Kendi, and particularly Brian Stevenson, had a massive impact on me. And I felt very fortunate to steward Brian Stevenson's visit out to the campus a couple of years ago. And I'm such an admirer of what he's accomplished with the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, and how sculpture has really played a central role in that. And often I'll get the question from people regarding the campus collection of, why do we need art on the campus? The trees are beautiful. Isn't that enough? And I would answer that question with a statement that was given by a recent Verne lecturer here who was lecturing about climate change. And they said, well, you can't change a feeling with a fact. And it takes something more than that. And I think that art has this incredible capacity to reach beyond our intellect. It certainly engages our intellect in the life of the mind and in keeping with the goals of the institution. But what it also does is it puts us in a state where it engages us more directly with our feelings, our emotions, and our interiority. And I think that there's a moment in that when you walk past something every day, that there's this opportunity to really reach in and look within yourself. And that is where transformation begins to take place. And so I'm so excited to be a part of this project, because I think what we're going to be creating on campus is not just another work of art, but a context, an experience, a place where people can have a very intimate moment, and they can also have a collective moment with others as they experience it.
Well, thank you all for sharing your thoughts and for your time on the committee. It's really been a pleasure working with each of you and with all the other members of the committee. It's been really great. There's another member of our team who was not able to be with us today, and we'd like to hear from her by video. And we'll have some comments from Dr. Hillary Green, who was the Vann Professor of Ethics and Society at Davidson last year. She is an associate professor of gender and race studies at the University of Alabama, and also co-leads the African American Studies program there. She is a U.S. Civil War and Reconstruction scholar, and she has been instrumental in our committee's work. Dr. Green's expertise and perspective has been invaluable in this process and to Davidson College.
Hello, it's great to be here this evening with you virtually. Last year, as the Vann Professor, it was a great time to be at Davidson College, as it was a pivotal time for the community to think through and start to implement some of the task force findings of the history of slavery and race on the campus with students, faculty, and other campus stakeholders, including members of the Commemoration Committee. What I really appreciate about this process, and especially the hard work that has been done by the Commemoration Committee, is that it represents Davidson in so many ways. It is internal to the history and community. It was not imposed upon by others. It came naturally from the community itself. It also reflects the long, complicated history of the campus and the values of the campus. What struck me last year and continuing as this process has developed is the thoughtfulness involved in how to reconcile with the history of slavery and race at Davidson, in which the Commemoration Committee's work in proposing a new public art piece is a part of. Because beginning with the creation of the task force to now, where we are today, contemplating a new public arts piece, it has not been rushed. It has been extremely thoughtful. It has been developed with care, with reflection, and with input from diverse communities who are impacted by it, both faculty, students, alumni, and community members. And the resultant piece will also continue the great public art pieces that already exist on the campus. You have a beautiful campus, and this piece is another piece to add an avenue to understand the past, to think about the present, and to think about the future by past, present, and current students and future students and communities who are engaging with this history, not as a stumbling block, not as something to hinder and to tie the campus back, but a stepping stone for building a more inclusive, diverse, and healthy Davidson campus community and community relations with surrounding communities. So this type of commemorative work has made a difference at other institutions, and I believe it will make a difference at Davidson as well. But one of the things that makes, again, Davidson unique, many schools like the University of Virginia and others have large Research One universities, and very few institutions that are small liberal arts have embarked on this work. So Davidson will be at the forefront of a movement among small liberal arts colleges and be able to speak to these larger institutions that have been at this work longer, but still trudging away to finally get to their art pieces. And this is where I think what makes Davidson unique and this process unique is that Davidson's doing something that's organic to itself and to build in here. I am grateful to see the immense progress that the committee has done since I have departed from Davidson's campus. They have put the same thoughtfulness, care, and reflection, and are gaining the input necessary that has shaped this entire process to create even this new art piece. I am looking forward to seeing the next stages as the work moves forward to its design phase and finally its installation, and I can't wait to see the final piece. Thank you so much for this hard work, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. Thank you.
Hillary was just so great on our committee. We went through a very interesting process. Where we are now is at the beginning, but we've been talking about this for almost a year. And in that time, we really wanted to begin as far out as we could, a 30, 40,000 foot view, not of just what do we want, but understanding why we would want something, how we would go about it. And so we talked to so many different people, from archivists at the Davidson Library, members of the community. Hillary, of course, was hugely influential for us. And we conducted workshops where really what we asked in our workshops is asking members that were on the committee to imagine themselves being transformed, a moment where they went to a monument or some commemorative site and came away changed. And what was their experience like, and what was a part of that experience? So what we really began with was trying to define an experience rather than a final product or a thing. And so we really spent time, we looked at things like the Vietnam War Memorial, a variety of Holocaust memorials. We also looked at the Equal Justice Initiative and the sculptures and the memorials that are there. And it was very clear that there's a moment where we can reside in a space of empathy, and there is a context where we can create both a very intimate personal experience and also create a place that can host events, have gatherings, and allow for the community as a whole to transform. And so, and that's where we are. And what we came to was the characteristics of what we're looking for rather than a literal thing. And so we've done a lot of talking, discussion. They've been great conversations. And basically all of that was to arrive at the start and of a conversation with the broader public and the RFQ, that the request for qualifications that we're putting forth for people to sort of throw their hat in the ring.
Well, thank you, Court, for sharing with everyone sort of the foundational work of the committee. It's been a lot of effort to try to understand what we're about to embark on. So let me talk about what remains for the committee. We hope to soon announce the preferred campus location for the commemoration site. In July, some of the members visited the campus and we studied several potential locations, and more to come on that hopefully very soon. And of course, we planned this evening's event to update the community on the project and our plans and processes moving forward. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be releasing the RFQ, as Court mentioned, to potential creative teams, including artists and architects interested in the project. We will positively and proactively seek responses from diverse groups of creatives capable of speaking to the subject matter in an informed and very thoughtful manner. The deadline for the RFQ will be December 31, 2021. Beginning in January and then going through March, a jury made up of 16 people, a few of whom I mentioned earlier, representing a range of constituencies, including our committee, but also added to that will be students, faculty, staff, alumni, and local community members. Will evaluate the RFQ submissions. In April, the jury will announce the selection of 3 finalists who will be awarded stipends to visit campus and research their proposals during the summer of 2022. Finalists will be encouraged to engage with the local college and community as they develop their final proposals. And then in the fall of next year, the 3 finalists will again visit campus to give their presentations to the jury. This process will result in an announcement of the winning artist, architect, or creative team, and that will be voted on by the Board of Trustees in October of 2022.
Well, as you can see, we have got a lot of work ahead of us, even though a lot of work has been done. And this commemoration is something that we're doing here. This, I talked about what it meant to me as an alum, as a parent, but this is going to be something that students are going to live with. So we're going to go to a section after this for Q&A from the people who are here and those who are on the Zoom. But before that, we'd like to show a short film of what students are thinking about and hear what they think and what they're seeing.
Yeah, I think we as a community, as the Davidson community, have an obligation to show our values, and a commemorative project like this is a really great way to have the past sort of be honored and do so in a really permanent way, and do so in a way that we will bring the whole community, I think, together.
So I think that one of the most important things that Davidson has taught me is the importance of developing a community. I think that really distinguishes Davidson from any other college. You build a community here that supports you, that helps you grow as a person, and I think that really opens up a world of opportunity for our students here. But acknowledging that there have been historic disparities between who was able to be part of that community. A lot of those disparities persist in a systemic way, and it's not enough to say that, well, we don't have the same type of discrimination or levels of discrimination that used to exist in the past, but we need to acknowledge the effect that those have had on our students.
There is something to be said about self-reflection when it comes to anti-racism work. I know that over the past year or two, I've had to look inwards at my own prejudices in order to move forward on like anti-racism work. And I think that's what the college is really tried to do with this project.
The art installations that we see around campus reflect certain ideals that we hold as part of our campus community. They also reflect our appreciation of the beauty around us, both in the people that are here on campus and the ideas that we celebrate, and in the way that we move forward from our lives after Davidson.
I think that's the potential to make campus a better place in a way that when you have something, you have the school sort of saying that this is what is important to us, it can really sort of trickle down, I think, to the rest of the reader community and to the campus community.
And so now we want to hear from you. We want to use the balance of this time available to us to get your questions or comments. If you're in the building, use one of the microphones. Please come up and I'll call on you. If you're on Zoom, please put your question in the chat and one of my distinguished colleagues will answer the question for you. So who would like to be the first person to answer or to ask a question? We've got plenty of time. I can wait. Please come to the mic so we can hear you, your question. There's a second microphone on this side, so you can start queuing up for the next question.
Hello, Artie.
Hi.
Thank you for your time and for your explanation. The work you guys have been doing, it's really significant, and it's comforting to know that it's not just completely brushed over, that there's work being done as we speak to make this campus more inclusive. I guess my question is, will this art installation or this project be intentional and force people to interact with it, engage with it, and truly face it? I'm concerned that with some of these artwork pieces, and some students aren't even aware of them or notice them. And I kind of want students to be forced to confront whatever project you guys choose to create. So yeah.
There are some very deliberate intentions with the art piece. One of it is that it will be visible and accessible by not only students, by members of the community, so that not only will students be able to interact with it, but members of the community will as well. And the intention is for it to be both a place of individual reflection or a place where a group of people can gather and have a dialogue or discussion. It is intended to be a place for engagement and potentially the opportunity to have some longer term programming around, whether it's an art installation or lectures. So it is purposely designed to be interactive.
May I add something to that too?
Absolutely.
Even in our inspiration in the conversations we had before creating the RFQ, which we're going to send to artists and architects, the things that we were looking at, the monuments, anti-monuments, installations in other places for, Holocaust memorials or 9/11, they were things that force you to interact. And that was one of the things that we think was so moving about it, that you get a lot of different feelings and different senses are engaged. And it's, the things that inspired us to write what we did, even though we have no idea what artist it's going to be or what it's going to look like, the reason that those mattered to us and the things that informed our decisions was because we do want people to have to experience, confront, think, question. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but I think we will have failed if we don't at least create something that does what you're hoping. It's an ineffable, difficult thing, but it's certainly in our ambition.
Alrighty, thank you, I appreciate it.
I would add that, there's the only path for us is got to be clear-eyed. It's got to be transparent and honest. And I think that's where we all see the most growth. I think that's very, wholly in keeping with the institutional mission. And I don't think we could commit too prominent a location to this or too large a scale to this, because it's foundational, to the institution and where we collectively want to go. So one of the best things that occurred in one of the conversations we had earlier on that really resonated with me was that numerous members in the group were very interested to be certain that we didn't gloss over something, that we were able to address the issues head on, and that should be present in the whatever results. At the same time, people were also saying, we also want people to be able to come away optimistic and positive about where we're going as an institution and about all of these issues. So I think that this kind of balance of, I would characterize it as clear-eyed sobriety. You might characterize it as confrontational. And, but also this idea of inhabiting a space of optimism about the future it's an interesting and important balance that we're looking for in whoever ends up being the person who manages the project.
Thank you very much.
Court, I think that's a great point to make, is that we want this to be something that acknowledges the past, recognizes the future, and recognizes the present rather, and aspires to the future, all at the same time. So it is an ambitious goal, but we feel that that's important. It's not just about what happened, but what can happen.
So if nobody else is coming up to a microphone,
They're not yet coming.
if you're not rushing, we're gonna divert a little to some of the Zoom questions, because some great Zoom questions are coming in. Some of them are related to each other. So I will start by saying that Jennifer is asking, my question is, what other conversations and or curriculum will be wrapped around this? How does this past and learning about and rectifying it become more central to the culture of the campus? We'll start with that. There's a secondary question that I think also relates to that just a little bit after that. Actually, I'm going to combine them because we've got more questions coming in, which is really exciting. But Larry asks, I wonder what kinds of long-term programmatic elements will be wed to this installation, elements that will keep the discovery and conversation going forward. So,
well, I'll start with that, and I think others can chime in. But what we want to do is to ensure that there is sort of an adjunct connection, whether it's to the library or to another facility nearby, that there can be research or it could be studies, but also where there can be lecture and discussion, whether it's a small group or a class held in and or around or adjacent to the commemoration site.
Let me follow up on that, that was one of the discussions we had. What could this space do? What could it allow us to do? So I was part of the group that came and actually looked at the location. And we even looked at other locations on campus and thought about ways that we might be able to tie this, what we do there, to other places on campus. We do see this as something that is not a static space. It's a space for reflection, but it also needs to tie and connect. And I talked earlier about connecting to stories. It's a bridge. It's a bridge to the past, to now, and to the future. And so that will require us situating this in a place where people can be involved with it, but also situating it in the story that is Davidson College. So I do believe that our goal is, anyway, that we create a space that is living. I mean, that's what's important to us. This is not a statue that's going to sit someplace and you walk past it. It's a living space. And part of that life has to do with connecting it in other ways to the college and making it a part of this whole experience. So I'll just jump in, and we have some more questions in here if nobody's coming up to the mic.
I think there's a question. Yes, there's a question right here. Yes, young man.
I think there's just a little bit of like a kind of a clarification point that I'm looking for. This installation and this idea, I'm it sounds like I kind of just want to like pose like a hypothetical. So we have in, however many years it takes to find the artists and get the pitches and decide and have them constructed. And this piece exists and it's beautiful and it's everything we want it to be. It's not static, it's inclusive, it's living, it's breathing. Was there any other like initiatives that this group has proposed to help students, Black students in particular on campus outside of this sculpture idea? Like, was there any recommendations about sort of changes we could make within like the academic culture at Davidson or within the business side of Davidson to help the students on campus now outside of this commemorative space?
Can I respond to that? Some of that work is also being done in the commission. So this was one recommendation from the commission, that we do something to commemorate the contribution of Black people to this college in the past. That's part of it. So this is a piece of that. But some of those other recommendations are part of the overall Slavery Commission report. So yes, that has been looked at. It's just that's not what this particular piece is necessarily.
Very good question, though. Yeah, this is one component of the things that the college wants to do to reconcile its relationship with labor that was not compensated. Zoom question?
I was going to jump to the next Zoom question, if that's all right. Adrian wants to know, what is the message you want the art piece to project? Can I start with that? I don't know what message I want it to project or that we have come up with as a group. I think there are probably different messages for every person that experiences it. And I'm not saying that, all art is subjective. It's just that we're not far enough in the process. We definitely want this piece to acknowledge a gap, to acknowledge injustice, but I don't know that there's a single or singular message. I mean, people can talk about it. We don't know yet. It's really early. I think that when we engage an artist, they will have a message and then we'll work with it. But what do other people have to say to that? I don't know if there's a single one.
Yeah, I think it's more what we want people to feel as opposed to what we want this thing to look like. And we're certainly not going to predetermine what an artist would design, but we want this to be a place of deep introspection. We want it to be a place, as we've talked about, where people can acknowledge and recognize the contributions of those who've contributed. We want this to be a place where you can walk in as an individual and experience as alone or with a group. We want it to be inspiring as to what the future can be and what we individually or collectively can contribute to that future.
Let me add to that, and also I'll bring up one of the questions that's in the Zoom. Mike says, is there an intention to hold up specific examples of how Davidson benefited from slavery, funds received, et cetera, in this installation? When we talk about what we want the message to be, the question that Mike has posed here, we have to think about what is it that we know? We know that Davidson benefited from the unpaid labor of people. So to Mike's question, yes, we know that's there. We know that there are families that are still involved with this college that go all the way back then. We know that there are names that we do know and names that we don't know. That's what we know. So we're going to take all those things that we know and we're going to put those in the hands of an artist whose job and whose talent will be to take the things that we know and turn that into something that we can then feel. So we didn't think that our role was to decide what exactly people were going to, what this thing was going to say. We don't know. We know that we know what we know, and we're going to give that to an artist. And what we hope is going to come back, and definitely in the piece that we choose, We hope that it will say all of those things in some way, but it won't say everything that needs to be said, because there's a part of art where you have to bring yourself and your experience to it and take what is known, take what you know, and create a different experience. And that's what we hope this will do, because there's some people who've never thought about these things. Like Cintra was saying earlier, some people are going to be uncomfortable, but they'll still have the things that we know. They'll bring that discomfort to it, and they'll come from feeling something different. We hope that it will have that effect, whatever that effect is, on anybody who looks at it. But we expect that effect will be different for everybody.
I would add that I think that the final project, the day we all attend the commemoration and the unveiling or whatever that is, that's just the beginning. We're very interested in this project being a catalyst to create continuing programming, a continuing conversation, because everything that Janet was just sharing about what we know, there's also a lot we don't know, and we're still finding it out. And we need to have an ongoing conversation. So this isn't a project that once it's installed, we're done. Once it's installed, we're just getting started. And it's very important that it have that life that Janet was referencing. And to the question itself, often rather than thinking of what's the message of this artwork, I think that we can be asking ourselves, what are the questions that I'm asking when I engage with it? How is it inviting me to ask questions that I may have never asked? How is the situation itself functioning as a catalyst for me to open my awareness? We definitely talked about things like, people discussed, there needs to be an opportunity for people to grieve certain things. There needs to be an opportunity for people to experience, the whole range of their emotions that includes things like anger and sadness. But there's also needs to be the opportunity for people to engage that full spectrum of their emotions that includes hope and optimism and shared emotions. So I think that where I think we often look at a work of art and we want there to be this one defined, clear message, that we have to look at it a little more broadly, hopefully, and embrace a kind of ability to be in conversation with the thing and not just expect one answer.
Let me add one more point to that, then I'll stop. I'll leave that one alone. Your point about conversation, one thing on the things that we do know, one thing we know about Davidson students is we ask questions. I asked them when I was here, people are going to keep asking them. So I am not at all worried that if we give this community a catalyst for asking questions, that those questions will not get asked and then eventually answered. So I think the questions have been asked all along, but now we're saying, here's a place, here is a catalyst for you to ask us more difficult questions, because that's what Davidson students do. They ask difficult questions. I personally am ready to try to answer those questions. I think this college is ready. I think this college has admitted and acknowledged that these questions have gone unanswered and has stepped into the space now in so many ways to say that we're willing to have these discussions now. So this is not going to be the end of that conversation. This is the beginning of a new conversation. And so I don't know I'm sure there's going to be something that I haven't even thought that we should ask, but I'm looking forward to the conversation personally.
Speaking of asking questions, I think there are two young ladies that have questions that you want to come to the microphone.
Yeah, hello. I wanted to echo what Morgan said earlier about just thanking you for the work that you've done. I think you guys have taken a lot of intentional time into starting these conversations and seeing them through. And I just had a question. I was just curious about what spots you had looked on campus. I'm a sophomore and I have some conception of the fact that there are certain spots on campus that when I pass, I have a connection to them with this pass, specifically like the Bird's Nest, that health annex in between Belk and Commons. And so I was wondering what spots you guys had looked into, if you know, or
I think you're referring to the Sparrow's Nest.
Sparrow's Nest, sorry.
Yes, and that was one of the sites that we looked at, along with 4 others on campus.
Okay.
And we will have a final determination of that in a few days.
Okay.
The only thing I would say, though, is if the spot that we end up choosing is not one of those spots that evokes great feeling from you, we hope that it becomes one of your favorite most. important spots on campus by what we create and enable there, and that you'll have an experience with it that will then transform it to be the perfect spot for what we're doing.
Yeah, okay.
And definitely one of the things that we looked at when we looked at spots was because it's important to us that this commemoration be connected to the community. So one of the big things that we looked at when we walked around campus was what are the places where the community can connect with this? I mean, I would hope, as Hillary was saying, I would hope that we're leading the charge on small liberal arts colleges doing something like this. I mean, we don't know who will look at this. We don't know who will come to this. So we want it to be in a place that's accessible, not just to students, but to the community itself, because this is a bridge. And so we looked at several places on campus that will allow us to build that bridge in a way.
And one of the things that I would add is that it's really interesting how we have these emotional connections to various points on the campus. But I had so much fun when we went on the campus in our golf carts and drove around and looked at all these sites and had some, really wonderful discussion about it. I was riding with Janet in the back of a cart, and she shared with me, how her conception of the campus as a student was very different from conversations she had with her daughter, and that her daughter had a very different conception of the campus. And Virgil's conception of the campus, which was linked to going to the post office in town and how he would walk there, was very different from how a student inhabits the campus today.
Yeah.
So what's really fascinating is that there, while we of course have a lot of variables to consider, some very pragmatic and some loftier, what we know is that there's no way we're going to cite it in the place that everybody thinks, oh, that is the spot.
Yeah.
And also, what we also know is based on how various both building projects and campus sculpture and other things have transformed how we use the campus. And so I think one of the things that is most exciting is how this project, wherever it ends up being located, I think is going to change how the campus is, how traffic moves on the campus, how the campus gets utilized, and it's going to bring a dimension that none of us could even see, anticipate exactly how that's going to really realize itself.
Right, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I was on campus when we actually there was something called real mail that people put in a box and it was delivered in another box.
You had to walk across the street.
Yeah, you had to go pick it up. It didn't come in on your computer. That was way back when. But the other important thing is Court mentioned is that we want, and Janet too, we've all sort of referred to this, is that we want this to be some way to engage the broader Davidson community, because we in fact are honoring the ancestors of many of the people who still live in this community and who work on campus.
Okay, so it looks like we have a few more questions in this room and also at least one more on Zoom. So
Yes.
Thanks so much for your work with this project. I'm very excited about the potential and the possibilities, and to be able to honor those folks that we need to be honoring right now. My question is around community engagement, and you guys have been talking a lot about that. How are you going to engage the community in the decision-making process? I know that you have a 16-person jury, and I think that's fabulous. At what point will the community be able to engage either with some of those finalists and the project that and the art that they are presenting, or with the person that you've selected? Will there be an opportunity for the community to engage with the artists at any point, to be a part of the decision-making process?
Well, let's clarify the process. And so the decision is with the jury. The input from the community will be with the artists, and that will be in April when we select the finalists. Then those finalists will be asked to engage the community at a fairly significant level, right? So we want people to offer their input. I know a couple of people who are artists. We want them to listen because we want them to reflect the voices, the views, and the ideas of the people in the community in their final presentation. And so that will be the community involvement to help shape what the artists hear and see about what the final project should look like. But once those finalists final presentations are made, then that would be the jury's decision, and there will be people from the community that will be a part of the jury.
Okay, thank you.
And we have had some conversations with people in the community as part of our process. Virgil has been a great leader for this committee, and he had, you know, that input. We had people talk to us when we were getting to the part where we start to come to the beginning. We've had some of that input as part of this process so far.
Great, thank you.
So we have a couple more questions in the room, and we're running a little bit short on time. Anybody else want to pop up in the room? And if not, I will. Okay, good.
Hi, yeah, thank you all for everything you've been doing. I was wondering about where the money's coming from for this, and if there's a sort of like budget, how that's being allocated. And I guess a primary reason that I'm wondering is how this will relate to the other work that's being done as part of the commission. So like, how does your budget compare to maybe the other things that people are working on? And if that's not set, like how is that being determined and how malleable is that? And questions like that.
So we don't yet know what this is going to cost because we don't have a final project scope yet, but we intend to raise the funds privately. So we'll not use, we'll primarily be raising money from private donors to fund it.
And projects like this do sometimes attract dollars that otherwise wouldn't come for scholarships or for physical plant normally for a building. And so we do think that certain kinds of donors will find this interesting in a way that is incremental, not taking it away from programs that otherwise would benefit the general efforts of the commission.
I like how students are thinking about budgets.
Yeah,
that's great. That is really great. That's a great lesson to learn right now.
What's your major? I'm curious, like as far as like fundraising goes, is that something that you all are going to take on like in this commemoration process, or are you going to ask for support in that?
We have an amazing group of people who work here at the college full time, and also a committee of people that help them on a volunteer basis that are really surprisingly, amazingly good at raising money. So I believe that they will do the heavy lifting, but any members of the commission or the committee for this who wants to go out and help them solicit donors for this, I'm sure we would all sit in on a meeting and share the process or the passion for it. But you've got really good fundraisers here at Davidson College. So.
Yeah, no, that's super wonderful. Yeah, sorry.
One of the things I was going to add to that is that we don't just have great fundraisers. We have people who sit down with potential donors and benefactors and really have a conversation about what that person's goals are, and trying to find projects within the campus and the school that really align very clearly with that person's interest. So when we receive money to use toward campus sculpture, for example, this is someone who is interested to support this. We're not trying to pull them away from something else. It's really trying to accurately match the person who's providing funds to the goals that are their personal goals as well as institutional goals. And so I think that's particularly in my experience over a number of years and my interactions with people in development, they've been so thoughtful about that. And I don't see any reason why that would be any different with this project.
So we're just about out of time. And we have one more Zoom question we have not gotten to at least. Is there anybody else in the room who is just burning to ask a question at the microphone? Okay, so because we can address the Zoom questions later. Okay, so I will just read the last question I think we have time for, unless anyone wants to correct me, you can just let me know. But Kemmer from class of 67 on Zoom asks, in Chattanooga, the Ed Johnson Memorial Project created community. Jerome Meadows, a poet and sculptor engaged in the story of the lynching on the Walnut Street Bridge. How can Davidson move from Clint Smith's rectangular book, How the Word is Passed, to create a vision of history in sculpture and story?
Wow, first of all, Clint Smith wrote a great book, and if you haven't read it, I certainly commend it to you. It is an extremely enlightening book. I think that this project has so many facets to it in terms of inspiring hope and reconciliation. We're going through some very tenuous times in our country. And I think that this is just one of those ways that we can use to reconcile our past, but also look for ways to move forward in a much more productive future. And I think this is just one of those ways. It won't solve many problems, but I think it will be a nice step in a positive direction.
I see no more questions on Zoom. Oh no, there's probably any down below, but we are out of time. For those questions we didn't get to, if you're in the room and you want to ask us, I'm sure any of us, I mean, Virgil, you're in charge of this, but we would stick around and answer as best we can. For those of you online, we will try to get your questions answered in some way, either as a compilation that's public or specific to you, if it makes sense.
Yes, thank you all for being a part of this discussion. We're delighted that you have taken an interest in what we're doing. We will continue to keep you apprised. Please check out the website for more details as this process and this project moves along. This is going to be something that we will all of the members of the Davidson community can be proud of. Thank you.